Hey everyone, Jerry from LlamaIndex here. Today, I'm excited to feature Logan Kelly, co-founder of CallSine, which is an AI-powered email outreach platform designed for salespeople and teams seeking to send individualized emails to prospects at scale. And we're excited to say that it's built with a lot of LlamaIndex components under the hood. So we're excited to feature Logan, who will give an overview at a very high level, and we can also talk about some of the technical implementation details and do a general Q&A towards the second half of the session. So without further ado, passing it to Logan.
Great. Thanks, Jerry. So let me share my screen. Cool. So at a high level, the thing that we are trying to do with CallSine is personalize emails using three data components, one being seller data, the other being prospect data, and the third being the activity that the prospect is taking. So at the core of it, we'll kind of walk through how to set it up, and then at the end of this, we'll show how to actually generate an email. So we can see here, this is our materials. So in this screen, we're actually uploading the data. So we can take in PDFs, Word documents, we can add websites to it, those kinds of things. And this is to train the system on the seller's company. So anything that helps the seller train the system on what they are, what they're selling, case studies, these kinds of things. The second piece is we have what are called playbooks. And what the playbooks are is they are a series of prompts. So we'll come in here. And so what we've built is what are called context tags. So instead of like in email template, systems like Salesforce or SalesLoft or HubSpot, they'll have like personalization tokens. So you can say, hi, first name, right? And so what we've done is I'll show you on the next page, we can actually pull in prospect information, what their value proposition is, recent news about the company, these kinds of things. And so instead of personalization tokens, we look at what we call our context tags. And so this particular prompt, we can see we want to relate the value prop of CallSine to the company. And then we're feeding the system with some recent news that's then being related to the actual seller's content. And instead of a series of email templates, we're actually we've created a playbook of prompts. So you can go up to 10 positions. So when we're generating the emails, this is going to take the seller's information, the prospect's information, and create a completely unique personalized email using all of that. And so then we look at the people screen, and this is going to look similar to anybody who's ever used a CRM or a sales engagement tool. Like there's a lot of great ones out there: HubSpot, SalesLoft, this kind of stuff. The difference between us and any CRM that you've ever used is when you either add a person, so you can add a single person and bam, or you can actually import like a CSV of people. What's happening on that back end is we've built out an infrastructure to go grab the information from the prospect's website. We have a bunch of APIs that are pulling information, technology that's used, news about the company, all these kinds of things. And that's what feeds those context tags I was showing you on the playbook page. So when we get to the nuts and bolts of it, I'll go to my handy dandy John Smith contact. Now, what we've done with this is an actual company, LeadIQ, great contact data company. So we're gonna generate a couple of emails here. So we have that playbook there. That was the company news playbook. And if I just click here into the generate emails, I can actually select the playbook, and then I'll say that I want to overwrite what's here. And what's going to happen is that's going to pull that data from the playbook. And you can see the generation is going to come in. Takes a second. And so that's pulling the data that we've added to the materials about the seller company. It's pulling in the information about the data that came in from the prospect. and it's actually writing the email. And so what we've done is we've done some fine tuning, and also continuously training the system to actually write a better and better email based on things like what response rates are getting, these kinds of things. So it'll take a second. So we can see here a lot of emails that are kind of templated and sent out in mass via sales engagement tools like a HubSpot, a SalesLoft, these kinds of things. Salespeople don't have the opportunity to customize those emails at the level because they need to do all this research. They need to go to a website. They need to figure out what to say, this kind of stuff. So we can see this is the recent news. This is the recent news playbook. And we can see here, it's talking about the recent product release. So this is real on LeadIQ's website, talking about they're focusing on enhancing B2B prospecting. In some of the generations, it'll talk about how they're using AI, and then it relates it very nicely to what we're doing and asking if there's a potential for a partnership. So that's there. So that's kind of where we're at. One thing I wanted to show everybody, because it's kind of what we believe is the future, is the current way that prompting is done, and with a lot of AI tools, prompting is needed to be done by the actual user. But it's not easy. There's a learning curve that everybody has to go through, going from templates to prompts and more instructions. And so what we've built is we've built a system that can actually write the prompts for the users using the data that's already in the context. And so I can show you this here. This will be live in a few days. So we can select which materials we want to use, and then we could say something like call out specific blog articles by title to show value of CallSine. And then we could say target audience, we're going after technology companies. And so what this will do is it will actually create a playbook's worth of prompts for the user, digging through the data that's already been provided, and then bringing it into the actual playbook. So the need for the user, as I said, to come up with these prompts is greatly reduced and gives them a good starting point to then edit them and kind of optimize them as opposed to starting from scratch. So one of the cool things here is if we look at using ChatGPT, for example, it will make up a lot of the data that's in the system, and that's one of the things we're solving with RAG. So so these are actual blog articles on our site that can then be translated into the can be transferred into the playbooks, so that material will be referenced while the emails are being created, and creating that specificity that's very important on that in the sales kind of arena. So yeah, that's what we got going on.
Cool. Thanks, Logan, for the demo. That was fantastic. I think I really like the idea of having kind of more personalized sales templates, and it's like you're actually using LLMs for both a new way of template prompting, but then also creating the template itself. So I think that part is actually super interesting. So taking a step back, I'd actually first love to really understand what led you to start the project and company, and what was the pain point that you specifically set out to solve?
Yeah, so my partners and I had a lead generation company that we spent about 8 years building. So we were sending emails, we had phone calls, we were doing LinkedIn, and one of the holy grails in the space was, can we do this, right? Can we, using some combination of merge tags and Excel spreadsheets, can we kind of create these personalized emails based on things like title and all these conditional formatting? It was a mess, right? And a lot of tools have tried to simplify this, So when OpenAI and GPT kind of exploded, myself and the team kind of dove right into how do we do this, right? It quickly became apparent that just going right to like GPT and asking it to write emails wasn't going to be the answer, because there was everything from hallucinations are an extreme example, but in sales it's a lot more than just like saying something completely wrong. It's like not saying something good enough doesn't get you the wins that you need. And so what we were really focused on was, can we build a tool that we can use for our clients? And then as the year progressed, we started to realize like, whoa, this could be a standalone company. And that's where we spun off CallSine and launched it towards the end of last year.
How did you find your earliest users?
Well, our earliest users were ourselves, right? So we got to spend probably 8 months, really in the lab. And the other thing we did was, so we were using the tool kind of ourselves, and really without the pressure of a customer, breathing down our neck, and able to kind of optimize that. But then while that was happening, we were also, we're a sales company, right? So we were also doing the outreach, kind of drumming up that initial interest. And so when we launched, we had about 1,500, people who had said like, yeah, if you guys build something like this, we'll be interested. So we started outreaching with that in like March, and we didn't launch till the end of December. So we had a pretty excited group of people chomping at the bit to come on.
What is the target ICP that you're going after, especially for the initial users? You mentioned you had a pretty popular, or it seemed like it had a lot of demand from just general sales teams. Which ones are you choosing to focus on first?
Yeah, so we've built this. So there's kind of two facets to our business. So we have the app itself, and then we have an SDK that we're actually powering other sales apps. So for the app, which we just demoed today, we're looking at the under 20 person sales team, right? What I think about is founders and smaller sales teams who have to go close their own deals, who don't have time to do this work at scale. And when you're starting your own company or you have a small sales team, you go through times where there's a lot of sales activity, closing activity, late stage stuff. And then once all those deals are closed, you wake up the next morning, and you don't have anything in the pipeline. And so what I saw, and so with that, like the solution previously was, let's just make sure that we're blasting out 1,000 emails a day and get what we can get. And so when we look at that smaller sales org ICP for our app, it's really to ensure that they can spend an hour a day, schedule 20, 30 sequences, right? So 5, 10 emails that are all personalized, schedule those out, which I didn't show. We have all the the email integration tools. Schedule those out, so you're constantly having this really high quality outreach, but you're not having to do the work that you would generally have to do a good job. So that's where we're really focused on that smaller team for the app itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for smaller teams. I'm actually kind of curious if I would be able to use some of this. Well, in terms of what people are looking for, what are there like target metrics that you're trying to hit in terms of like just KPIs for the end user? Like for instance, like time saved, like cost saved, like X% of your workload is reduced.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think like response rate is really what we're looking at, because when you look at the other tools on the market, right, you've got these sales engagement tools that kind of allow you to schedule out a pretty enormous amount of emails and all this kind of stuff. So it's not like so there's one side of the space that it's like, I don't want to send out templated emails. I want to handcraft every single message. We can save that person a lot of time. But in the world of sales, that's not really that we're not saving people as much time as kind of just replacing the time, because they're already just going through cadence sequence with, a bunch of messages. So what we're really looking at is reply rate, and then what level of your, there's this thing that happens when you send out all of the same emails or templated emails over the course of a couple of months, is you start to see your open rates like drop precipitously, right? Because the email service providers are doing whatever email service providers do, putting you in the other inbox, putting you in the spam inbox, whatever that is. And so what we look at it is two things: is the reply rate increasing, and then is your open rate, your kind of email engagement, like click rate and all of that kind of stuff, is that staying consistent over 6 to 12 months is really what we're looking at. And the early signs are absolutely, because it looks like it's individualized to every single prospect, because it is. It might not be handwritten to every prospect, but it's a heck of a lot better than sending the same template. So to answer your question directly, we're looking at reply rate. Can we get a bump on the actual success of the work? And then the other side is, can we keep your email in a better standing with the ESPs over the course of doing this sales work?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Quick, one more question along this angle. Given your current target market of under 20% sales teams, are you focusing on like quality versus quantity of like design partners, users feedback, or are you optimizing for something more PLG self-serve?
Yeah, so the way that we've gone after this is this is such a big problem that we're solving, right? So it's a pretty, there's a lot of companies that could use this, right, across a lot of verticals and all of this kind of stuff. So product-led growth is really what we've followed, because there was a certain point in like November, I was like, we have to stop building features. We have to just get people on the product and give us the feedback and kind of go from there. And that's where things like, the prompt generation, one of the hardest things that that we found was people were asking, how do I write better prompts? How do I write better playbooks? So over the course of the last 2 months, we fine-tuned a model that can write really powerful prompts that, have a better chance of actually getting sent. So product-led growth is really what we're using, because this is such a big ambiguous problem. We need thousands of users to give us the feedback on what they actually, what they're actually looking for. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next piece of questioning or just questions is just kind of more along the founder journey, and especially since you're building a vertically focused AI company that is for like the sales user. Just curious, for other people like building or thinking about building stuff that's a little bit more end user oriented, what are some of the top learnings that you have and some top pieces of advice?
Yeah, so I have a technical answer to this, and then I have, like, if you're a founder, like double or triple your timelines, because this is every day. It's going to be something different. There's a lot of opportunity for scope creep, and that's not always the worst thing in the world, right? Because when you start building a company like this, you're not going to know all the possibilities. And so you want to give yourself the opportunity to go down and explore the rabbit holes, because those rabbit holes can end up in really cool, features that differentiate you. So just like blow out your timelines, because you're not gonna adhere to any of them. On the other side, when we look at like vertically focused technology with LLMs and RAG and all of this, there's this. I think like when I started, there was this idea that it's like, if I just throw all this into a vector database, and then the query will kind of take care of it. But the opportunity you have with like a vertically focused system like CallSine is like, we can kind of step back and say, okay, we got information from a website. Like, what does that actually mean to the system? And we can structure that data so that we're not just pushing a bunch of unstructured data into the system. We can use the LLMs to kind of add context to each piece of data before it goes in. Because if you're vertically focused, you probably understand exactly what your outputs will be. And so adding data into your system should be, even if it's unstructured, you should be structuring it with the end goal in mind. So for example, every time we scrape a website, we're asking the same 6 to 10 questions, even though that's, the answers are all going to be different. That's the point. But then later on in our generation, we have an easier time kind of putting all that back together.
Right. So you're kind of talking about setting up like a almost because it is use case specific. And if you're building a vertical company, then you might as well build like a use case specific pipeline that really optimizes performance in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And that's a nice segue into that next set of questions, which is, to the extent that you're able to talk about the implementation, just curious about just at a very high level, like what are some of the current challenges that you're facing? And roughly speaking, like how do you think about like the RAG versus like agent space and kind of like how do you see that evolving in the future? We could start with the first piece is just like what are some of the obstacles or challenges that you face in being able to make this work?
Yeah. So the one of the biggest problems that we had to solve in the from the get go, and it is like each time you add a new kind of piece of data or a new like type of data, right? So in our case, we have the seller, we have prospect, and we have activities. Um, it it's not so simple as just like asking the system to hey, write a sales email to this person, based on this, and putting all of that data in there kind of unstructured. And the system isn't going to just figure out, what it's doing. So I think like the first like kind of big problem we had to solve was how do we, using RAG, like how do we kind of build that pipeline so it's using specific indexes that are maybe a little bit more customized to answer those specific questions. And I spent months on just that, trying to optimize how to get that right. So that was one of the big things, and then one of the other problems is like we're writing sales emails, right? So formatting matters, word count matters, like all of these like little things. And so we spent a lot of time building out, um, you know, an infrastructure to double check that the emails are even good, right? Or that they meet the context, or that they're even true. And so trying to control that, because as I said, like hallucinations are like an extreme example, but that's like so far away from even, we're talking about minute errors or minute wording issues could be the difference between getting a response and not getting a response. And so we had to spend a lot of time on figuring out how to control that, and sending it back to the LLM to rewrite things if it's not good enough.
So how did
So
you
those were the two biggest ones. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was for the second one, I was curious how you if you were able to go a little bit more into detail on just like the kind of like detecting failures, like was it via humans? Like do you have some automated system for doing it? How did you implement some like retry thing?
Yeah, so we started. It was a lot of like human work, just like looking at generations, and then uh, kind of building a corpus that we could use to fine tune. So when we look at like structure or like the openers and these kinds of things, so there was a lot of human input to train that, and then we built a kind of a second ingestion pipeline that could take what was said and then try to validate that it was all true. This is where LlamaIndex has some wild tools to be able to understand. This is the document that was referenced. Was that does this actually line up to that? Those kinds of things are pretty like critical. And so like having that ability to kind of quick, it needs to be quick too, but like using the tools that are kind of that I call it like the citations of the particular generations, and then kind of sticking that back in and kind of doing a gut check on that. That reduced our errors substantially, because we're able to use kind of our fine-tuned models as well as the embeddings themselves to validate that that information was correct. And then, the last piece is, we built out a editor that, and the ability for the user to regenerate it as well, which we've seen our regenerations fall precipitously over the last probably 60 days as we've tightened up the checking pipelines, which has been really cool to see.
So that's an interesting metric. Basically, a sign that your quality is improving is to see the number of user interventions and see that go down over time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's nice about that is, per user, we're also able to kind of optimize that for the particular user. Did they change words and these kinds of things, and that can be at the user level updated, and that's getting. I think there's an interesting thing about, like, people want their own voice and their own tone and these kinds of things, which when you're writing sales emails, like, there is a right way to write a sales email and a wrong way to write a sales email, but allowing the user to kind of add their own words into that and then paying attention to that, those things are definitely used as well, as a layer of our training.
Great. And just the last question before we wrap up is, what are some technical and product aspects that you're excited about for the future?
Yeah. So from a future-based, like how large language models and RAG and these kinds of things can influence sales tools, is I personally see a future where, like, UIs are all about, feeding what you need to do into the system and having that, having the UI kind of work around what you want to do, as well as, kind of in the sales arena, activity, like a lot of workflows in these tools, are kind of predefined by the user. They're not defined by the actual activity or behavior of the particular prospect, right? And so, I see a big opportunity, and this is what we're working towards. Like, somebody gets an email and they click a link and they go to a particular web page. Well, like, how does that impact your workflow? Are you just going to kind of march down the path, like the Redcoats in the Revolutionary War getting picked off? Or are you going to, kind of adjust the strategy as things are happening? And I think that's where, a combination of using RAG and using fine tuning, and then using that, structured data that you can get through, the function calling and all of this, and you can start to send that structured information back to, the UI as well as the, a database. We don't have to be constrained to, what you thought was a good idea 4 weeks ago, when you set up the workflow. So that's really what we're working towards.
Interesting. So almost like a more personalized, dynamic user experience that learns based on their actions.
User experience, prospect experience, the whole 9 yards. I think, like, sales is about people, but we try to put technology in place that, tries to sanitize that, because it's work, right? And so, and that reduces sales success. So if we can be in a place where, the user's input and the prospect's input can build out an experience that, is better for the salesperson, better for the prospect, like, what does that do to pipeline growth? And that's really what we're here for.
Great. Well, Logan, thanks so much for your time. This is a really fun session, and I think this should be pretty useful both for both developers as well as any founders thinking about building these tools. And so really excited about the demo, and best of luck for the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for spending the time.